A real bombshell just dropped right in the heart of Washington, D.C., not with explosives or smoke, but with a truth so naked it sends shivers down the spine. In a hearing that history will undoubtedly record, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell did what few dare to do. He backed FBI Director Kash Patel into a corner. He asked a question that was simple, concise, yet sharp as a razor. Have you reviewed the entire Epstein file? And the answer from the head of America's most powerful law enforcement agency, personally, no. Hold on. Take a second to let that sink in. Kash Patel, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a man commanding thousands of agents with access to every corner of national intelligence, the man leading the investigation into the largest child sex trafficking ring in human history, just said he hasn't reviewed the files. Jeffrey Epstein, a name that evokes the horror of private islands, the Lolita Express, hidden cameras in bedrooms, and hundreds of innocent child victims. The names implicated in this case are not common criminals. They are billionaires, royalty, academics, and some of the most powerful politicians on earth. This is the darkest chapter in American history. Yet the captain of the FBI ship, the man with ultimate responsibility, answered casually, as if he were talking about some boring administrative paperwork forgotten on a desk. That attitude is not just apathy. It is a signal. And today, in this video, we are going to peel back every layer of Kash Patel's mask to show you this failure to review is not accidental. It is a cold, calculated move to protect the untouchables. Eric Swalwell immediately invoked a core principle of American politics: the buck stops at the top. In a case involving hundreds of underage victims and the alleged complicity of global elites, for the FBI director to claim he hasn't seen the files is an unacceptable anomaly. We need to analyze the motive behind this answer. In the world of intelligence and defense law, there's a term for this: plausible deniability. If Kash Patel admits he has read the files, he is forced to answer questions regarding specific names within them. He would be forced to acknowledge the recorded criminal acts, but by saying "I haven't seen it," Patel creates a legal shield for himself. He can stand before Congress and claim he knows nothing about the involvement of his superiors or political allies simply because he hasn't read it. Treating a seismic case like this as if it were trivial paperwork reveals a cold calculation. He isn't busy. He is choosing safety for himself and his faction over justice for the victims. As soon as Swalwell increased the pressure, Kash Patel shifted tactics. He went from indifference to attack mode. Patel stated, "My job is not to engage in political innuendo so you can go out and get your hit in your fundraising article." This is a textbook example of the aggressive defense mechanism. When an official cannot answer a question with the truth, they often seek to smear the motive of the questioner. Patel tried to belittle Swalwell, framing the search for truth as a political game to distract public opinion from the core issue. But look at the logic here. Swalwell asked about the truth within the files. Patel called it political innuendo. Since when has publishing a list of child sex abusers become a political act? If a president's name, Democrat or Republican, is in those files, releasing it is the FBI's mandatory duty. The fact that Patel equates truth with politics shows he is acting more like a partisan operative than a neutral law enforcement officer. Patel's aggression cannot hide his awkwardness. He attacked Swalwell because he had no other reasonable answer to protect the names lurking in the shadows. The climax of this theater lies in the exchange regarding Donald Trump. Swalwell, as a former prosecutor, reminded Patel of his oath: "Remember your oath to tell the truth." This is a lethal warning. Lying to Congress is perjury, a felony that carries a prison sentence. Patel knows this, and this is where we see the peak slipperiness of a cunning lawyer rather than the honesty of a cop. Swalwell's question was crystal clear. Did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the files? Patel's answer: "I have never spoken to President Trump about the Epstein files." Do you notice the subtle distinction here? The question was, did you report that his name is there? The answer should have been yes or no, but Patel answered, "I didn't chat about that topic." Why didn't Patel dare to simply say no, or his name isn't in there? Because Patel is a seasoned lawyer. He knows that if he lies directly to Congress, he faces jail time for perjury. Therefore, he chose a circuitous route. He denied discussing it, but avoided confirming whether the name exists or not. This evasion continued when asked about reporting to the Attorney General. Patel kept using vague phrases like, "We had discussions. The team conducted reviews, but absolutely refused to confirm specific content. This consistency in refusing a straight answer is the clearest sign that they are holding on to a damaging truth they dare not reveal. Why is a simple yes or no so difficult for the head of the FBI? There is only one reason. The truth is something he cannot admit. He dares not say yes because it confirms the connection. He dares not say no for fear of future perjury charges. He chooses silence and detours, a silence full of guilt. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the coup de grace that Swalwell delivered to Patel. When Patel tried to shut down the line of questioning with the cliché, the question has been asked and answered. Swalwell immediately cut him off. You have not answered it, and we will take your evasiveness as a consciousness of guilt. In U.S. law, consciousness of guilt is a critical concept. It implies that a defendant's behavior after the fact, such as lying, evasion, destroying evidence, or intimidating witnesses, can be used as evidence that they know they are guilty. Swalwell, using this term on the congressional floor, was not accidental. He is building a legal case against Kash Patel. When an innocent person is questioned, they answer clearly to clear their name. When someone with something to hide is questioned, they evade, blame, and counterattack. Swalwell is telling Patel right to his face on national television before millions of Americans, you are behaving like a guilty man. If Patel were innocent, if Trump were innocent, if there was nothing to hide, why break a sweat? Why twist every syllable? Why resort to aggression? Patel's attitude is the most damning evidence against him. He is afraid. It is the fear of a man trying to cover the sun with his hand. Swalwell didn't stop there. He proceeded to dismantle the biggest excuse Patel and his faction use to justify hiding the files. The court won't allow it. Sounds reasonable, right? We want to release it, but the law is the law. Our hands are tied. That is the song they have been singing for months. But Swalwell had the antidote ready. He quoted federal judge Richard Berman directly, the judge presiding over the Epstein case. What did Judge Berman say? Information contained in the grand jury transcripts pales in comparison to the Epstein investigation, information and materials in the hands of the Department of Justice. Do you understand the significance of this statement? It means the court only holds a tiny fraction, the real treasure trove of secrets. The videos, the client lists, the darkest evidence is in whose hands? It is in the hands of the FBI and the Department of Justice. It is in the hands of Kash Patel. The court is saying, don't blame me, you're the ones holding the keys. Swalwell calls this a shell game, a street hustler's trick with 3 cups and a ball. Patel keeps switching it. Not me, the court. The court says not us, you. He keeps moving the ball of responsibility so the public gets dizzy and never finds the truth. But today, that cheap magic trick has been exposed. There is no court block. The DOJ could release the entire file tomorrow if they wanted to, but they choose not to. They choose to protect child abusers rather than protect the public. The FBI was established with a mandate of loyalty to the Constitution, not loyalty to an individual or a political party. But what Kash Patel demonstrated this hearing runs completely counter to that principle. When an FBI director uses the evasive skills of a defense attorney to protect his side rather than exposing the truth, he is transforming the FBI from a sword of justice into a shield for the elite. If today they can blatantly bury evidence of child sex crimes simply because it implicates powerful figures, what will they hide tomorrow? Corruption, treason, or crimes against the people themselves? Patel's silence is not merely about covering for Epstein or Trump. It sends a chilling message to the entire judicial system that political loyalty now supersedes professional ethics. We are witnessing the FBI mutating, becoming a sort of private security firm paid for by taxpayer money, yet serving only the interests of those in power. This is truly the greatest tragedy for democracy. Through this hearing, the portrait of Kash Patel emerges, not as a defender of justice, but as a loyal gatekeeper for the dark secrets of the elite. Let's connect the dots. What are we seeing? An FBI director admitting he didn't bother to read the files of the largest sex trafficking case in history. Negligence or willful blindness. A high-ranking official refusing to answer yes, no regarding the president's involvement. Concealment. The head of an investigative agency personally attacking the questioner instead of providing information. Aggression of the guilty. A system blaming the courts while the courts confirm the FBI holds the evidence, deceit. Kash Patel's silence in this video carries a terrible weight. It is a silence that kills the hope of victims who have been waiting for justice. Over 250 victims, lives destroyed when they were just children. So they have waited decades. And now, as the door to justice cracks open, a bodyguard named Kash Patel stands blocking the threshold. Why? Because the names in those files are too big and too powerful. Perhaps Kash Patel's career and even the survival of the political faction he serves depends on keeping this Pandora's box sealed. Kash Patel's silence in this hearing screams louder than any megaphone. It screams, "We are covering this up, and we dare you to do anything about it." Kash Patel may have left that hearing without giving an answer, but that evasion was the answer. What the FBI is hiding in the Epstein files are truths that could likely shake the entire political system, and they are willing to trade the credibility of an entire law enforcement agency to keep it buried. Evasion is a confession. Silence is complicity. We, the ordinary citizens, do not have the power of the FBI director, but we have the right to know the truth. We have the right to demand justice for the children whose childhoods were stolen on that island of hell. Do not let this story die. Do not let the algorithm or the silence of the mainstream media bury it. Share this video. Spread the message. Let Kash Patel and those behind him know we are watching. And we will not stop until the very last name on the Epstein list is brought into the light. 3 minutes ago, Kash Patel ran into a real soldier. Today, Ted Lieu isn't just an ordinary politician. Yes, he is the Democratic congressman representing California. But before that, he was a JAG officer in the Air Force, a military lawyer. He is someone who has handled every kind of case for years, from war crimes to espionage trials. This is someone who knows interrogation techniques inside out, someone who can smell a lie, someone who catches inconsistencies in micro-expressions in mere seconds. In military courts, you learn that people follow certain patterns when they lie. They give evasive answers. They try to dodge a question with another question. They get bogged down in details but miss the big picture. Ted Lieu knows these patterns by heart. And today, right here in the congressional chamber, he used that entire arsenal of experience against Kash Patel. The Epstein files were on the table again, but this time something different happened. You didn't ask the questions other members of Congress were asking. He came from a completely different angle. It hit from unexpected blind spots and caught Patel completely flat-footed. His first words tensed the entire room. "Director Patel, I am a former military lawyer. I've conducted hundreds of inquiries throughout my career. I interrogated war criminals, spies, and traitors. And let me tell you this, and the answers you've given so far perfectly match the profile of someone who is hiding something. The same techniques, the same old tricks, the same body language." Patel tried to object, and Lieu raised his hand to stop him. "I have no questions at the moment. I'm sharing my observation. My questions will be coming, and I expect a clear answer for each of them." Narrator, if you are new to this channel, stay tuned. Ted Lieu's line of questioning hits the most vulnerable spots, and every answer Patel gives only makes the situation worse. This is just the beginning. Ted Lieu's strategy was different from the others. He didn't start directly with Epstein. First, he questioned the general functioning of the FBI. This tactic was a move to get Patel to relax, to lower his defenses by getting him to talk about a safe space, and then deliver the final blow. This is the basic principle of military interrogation. Director, how does a standard investigation file work at the FBI? Who reviews it and who approves it? How does the process work? Patel seemed relieved. It was a technical question. It looked harmless. He replied, "Each file is first compiled by field agents, then goes to unit chiefs, and from there directly to the directorate. Important files end up directly on my desk." Ted Lieu nodded. He had what he needed. Beautiful, important files come to your desk. We have that on record. So is the Epstein file important? Of course, it's important. So did it come to your desk then? Patel froze. He had seen the trap, but it was too late. He had cornered himself with his own words. Some of the files and some of it, you just said important files come directly to my desk. You said Epstein was important. Didn't the file come to your desk? Patel was squirming. It looked like he was starting to sweat. "I couldn't review the entire file personally." Lieu hardened his tone. "You're not answering the question, Director. Has the file reached your desk? Yes or no? I want 2 words." And the summaries of the files have arrived. Summaries. The FBI director is reading summaries of the largest child abuse case in history, not the full file, just a summary. This moment was critical. Lou had cornered Patel using his own words. The inconsistency was blatantly obvious, and it went straight into the congressional record. The interrogation moved to the second stage, and this stage was even more brutal. Director, I'm going to ask you about a specific date, January 15th, 2025. On this date, the FBI conducted an internal review of the Epstein files. Is that right? Patel looked surprised. He seemed to wonder where Lou had learned this detail. His eyes narrowed. I don't remember the exact dates. You don't remember? Let me refresh your memory then. In the assessment conducted on January 15th, it was determined that there were 47 people in the high-profile names category within the files. Is this information correct? The room erupted. 47 names. This was a figure heard for the first time. Journalists started furiously taking notes. The camera zoomed in. Patel's face went pale. That is a classified internal report. How I know doesn't matter. Director, Congress has oversight authority. The important thing is that this report exists, and it completely contradicts your statement that we found nothing. 47 names do not mean nothing. Lou looked at the paper in his hand. 47 high-profile names. 12 of them are politicians. 8 are from the business world. 6 are media figures. The rest is a mix: academics, lawyers, lobbyists. These figures come from the FBI's own internal report, and you're telling the American people there's nothing wrong. How does this happen? Patel went on the defensive. That report was a draft, not finalized. Draft. There are 47 names in the draft report. So how many names are in the final report? Fewer or more? Silence. Director, did you hear my question? How many names are in the final report? It would not be appropriate for me to share this information. He leaned back against the ropes. It wouldn't be appropriate. Pay attention. He's not saying I don't know. He doesn't say no. He says it wouldn't be appropriate to share. This means there is a number, and this number is too large to share or too dangerous to share. There is no other explanation. By the time Lou reached the third stage, the atmosphere in the hall had completely changed. Patel was now on defense. He approached every question cautiously. He was thinking before answering. And this caution only strengthened Lou's hand, because someone who answers thoughtfully is hiding more than someone who answers spontaneously. Director, I will now ask you a question about the methodology. How did the FBI examine these files? How many agents were deployed? How long did it last? Which units were involved? Patel seemed a little relieved. Technical questions again. A special team was formed and a detailed examination was conducted. How many people are on the team? The exact number, guess around maybe 11. Lou raised his eyebrows. 10 people. Director, do you know how many FBI agents were assigned to the 9/11's investigation? Over 7,000 in the Oklahoma City bombing. Over 900. Hundreds of agents worked for years on the UN bomber case. And you're telling me you investigated the largest child sex trafficking network in history with 10 people? This comparison was devastating. 7,000 agents for terrorism, 10 agents for child abusers. The priorities were clear. The message was clear. For this administration, child abuse is less important than terrorism. Patel tried to defend himself. Quality, not quantity. Quality. Weren't you the one who just said you had to review the files? So what did your 1-person team investigate then? And what did they find? If they conducted a quality review, where are, and the results, we couldn't find a customer list showing the accomplices. Lou shook his finger. Be careful. They said they couldn't find the customer list. He's not saying there are no customers. He says there's no list. Maybe there's no organized list, but are there customers? Director, are there names? Are there records? Patel couldn't answer. The question wasn't rhetorical. Are there any customers in the files? Various names are being mentioned, but stop. You just said various names are being mentioned. This is an important confession. Who are these names? How many are there? In which categories? I can't explain this. He laughed, but it wasn't a fun laugh. It was a bitter smile. It was the laughter of disbelief. It's the same thing every time. There's a name, but you can't say it. There's no list, but there are names. You conducted a review, but you didn't read the files. There are 47 names, but you didn't find anything. Director Patel, Are you running the FBI or a cover-up operation? The climax of Lou's interrogation came when it took an unexpected turn. Director, I'm going to ask you a different question about Epstein's death. Patel's demeanor changed. He became even more anxious. He shifted in his seat. He wasn't expecting this topic. The FBI closed Epstein's death as a suicide. Is that right? The official finding is in this direction. Official finding. So what do the informal findings say? Do you remember what independent autopsy expert Dr. Michael Baden said? New York's former chief medical examiner, an expert with decades of experience? Patel didn't respond. Let me remind you, Dr. Baden said, that neck fractures are more consistent with the pathology of homicide than suicide. Multiple fractures of the hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage. These are seen in strangulation victims, but rarely in hanging suicides did the FBI evaluate this. External expert opinions have been added to the file. I asked if it was evaluated or added. These are different things. Adding a piece of paper to a file is one thing, but taking that paper seriously and examining it is another. Patel paused. It was evaluated and our official finding did not change. Lou leaned forward. So can you explain this? How does an inmate commit suicide in a maximum security prison under suicide watch in one of America's safest prisons? How can cameras break down at the same time? Did both cameras break down on the same night? How did the guards sleep at the same time? Did they both fall asleep? And how were neck bones broken in a manner inconsistent with suicide? Do you consider all of this a coincidence? Did it all happen on the same night? By coincidence, the investigation is complete. The investigation is complete, just like the Epstein files investigation was completed, just as the customer list research is completed. Everything is being completed, but nothing is coming out. Every investigation ends with closed, but there are no results. Isn't it strange, Director? Doesn't that seem strange to you? Don't forget to turn on notifications. These contents are usually not shown in recommendations. They are being suppressed by algorithms. The only way to stay informed is through notifications. As he finished his inquiry, Lou made one last move, and this move was perhaps the most devastating. Director Patel, one last question for you. This question is yes or no. I don't want evasive answers. I don't want a long explanation. One of two words. Patel waited. He looked tense. Will all the Epstein files, every document, every photo, every video, every recording currently at the Department of Justice be released to the public one day? Patel thought, legal obstacles, yes or no, Director. Some materials will never, yes or no. The hall fell silent. Lou's voice had risen. His patience had run out. Military discipline had broken through the restraint. Patel swallowed. No, some materials will never be shared with the public. Lou shook his head. A long silence, finally an honest answer. He says, never to be shared. Why? Who is being protected? Which names are so powerful that the public will never know them? Which power centers are ensuring this information remains secret? No response. Patel was staring straight ahead. More than 250 children were abused. Families were devastated. Lives have darkened. Little girls, little boys, their lives were shattered. And you're telling us that we'll never know. Some of the perpetrators. Is this justice, Director? Is this transparency? Is this accountability? Do the victims deserve this? And Lou stood up. I was a military lawyer. I prosecuted war criminals. I questioned the cases. And I looked at the faces of those who betrayed their country. And let me tell you this. The deception I've seen in this hall today is no different from that of the criminals I saw in those cases. The same techniques, the same strategies, the same silence, the same escape. He turned to Patel. History will judge you, Director, and the victims. Those more than 250 children. They will also judge you. Even if not today, even if not tomorrow, it will definitely happen someday. That day will come. By the time the inquiry was over, Patel's credibility had collapsed. The phrase, important files come to my desk, rang empty. The Epstein file was important, but it hadn't reached his desk. We found nothing, but there was a report with 47 names. The defense said there was no list, but there were names. It was said that everything was explained, but there were materials that would never be shared. The net result was the FBI is hiding files. They said the investigation was complete, but the director hadn't read the files. Each silence screamed that someone was being protected. Answers were expected, but as Patel put it, These answers might never come, and this never was the heaviest word for over 250 victims. Ted Lieu put this on the record today. That was all that remained. A military lawyer left the FBI director exposed in his own hearing. I never thought I'd live to see a sight like this, a sitting FBI director physically trembling before a television lens. Exactly 4 minutes ago, in a packed House Judiciary Committee hearing room with dozens of cameras from every major network pointed directly at the witness table, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, representing Washington's 7th District, asked a question so direct, so cutting, that Kash Patel's hand visibly trembled when he tried to reach for his water glass. Director Patel, she said, her voice calm but loaded with a dangerous weight, how many names are in the Epstein files that you personally redacted? Not your staff, not the classification team. The room went silent. It was that kind of dead silence where you can hear the hum of the air conditioning and the mechanical whir of camera lenses auto-focusing, because everyone in that room understood exactly what that question meant. It meant Jayapal had proof, and Patel knew it too. You could see the fear plainly on his face. Let me rewind a bit. House Judiciary Committee Oversight Hearing, January 22nd, 2026. According to the schedule, this was supposed to be a routine FBI budget discussion, updates on cybersecurity, maybe some back and forth about immigration enforcement. It was set up to be standard congressional theater. Republicans would praise Patel, Democrats would criticize him, everyone would read their prepared statements and go home. But that is not what happened. Pramila Jayapal walked into that hearing room with a thin blue folder. I noticed it immediately because Jayapal usually doesn't bring props to hearings. She's known for a memory as sharp as a razor, capable of quoting testimony from months ago without looking at notes. So that folder meant something specific, something documented, something she wanted everyone to see with their own eyes. The first 2 hours went exactly as predicted. Republican members lobbed softball questions about FBI successes. Democratic members pressed on civil liberties concerns. Patel gave his practiced answers. That smooth, bureaucratic tone that sounds like transparency but says absolutely nothing. And then it was Jayapal's turn. Director Patel, she began, opening the blue folder with deliberate slowness. I want to discuss the Epstein investigation files that were released last month. The temperature in the room seemed to drop instantly. Epstein questions always have that effect. But there was something different in how Jayapal said it. Not angry, not theatrical, just precise, like a surgeon announcing exactly where she is about to make the incision. Patel shifted slightly in his chair. Congresswoman, as you know, we've committed to unprecedented transparency regarding those files, and we released over 2,200 pages of material. That is not what I asked. Jayapal's interruption was sharp as a scalpel. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I asked about the files you redacted, not the files you released. The files were personally kept hidden. Here's where it got interesting. Patel's 3 lawyers sitting directly behind him all leaned forward at the exact same time. It was like watching a choreographed dance of panic. They knew something was coming. Congresswoman, Patel said, his voice steady but his right hand moving toward the edge of the table. I don't personally make redaction decisions on individual documents, and that is handled by career classification specialists. According to established protocols, Jayapal pulled a single sheet of paper from her blue folder. She held it up just long enough for the cameras to catch the FBI letterhead, the classification stamps, the official seal, and this is an internal FBI memorandum dated November 3rd, 2025. Subject line, classification, review, override authority. She paused. Let me read you something, Director. She put on reading glasses. Jayapal never wears glasses in hearings. Never. The glasses meant she wanted everyone to know this was verbatim, documented, unfiltered truth. Quote, upon review of the Epstein investigation document release, FBI Director Kash Patel has personally flagged 47 witness testimony files for permanent classification override. These files contain direct testimony naming individuals in positions of significant political and financial influence. Standard declassification protocols have been suspended pending the director's personal authorization. End quote. She looked up, signed by your Deputy Director of Counterintelligence. The room exploded. Not literally, but close whispers erupted across the gallery. Journalists were typing frantically. Republican members looked at each other with expressions ranging from confusion to an alarm. Patel's face went through three distinct changes in about 5 seconds. First, shock that she had the memo. Second, rapid calculation on how to respond. Third, something that looked a lot like fear. Congresswoman, that memo is being taken out of context. And then putting context. Jayapal's voice was ice. Explain to me and to the American people watching why you personally blocked the release of 47 witness testimonies that named powerful individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. 47 witnesses. Director. 47 people who came forward, who testified to the FBI, who named names. And you decided the public doesn't get to know what they said. Patel tried to recover with bureaucratic language. The classification process involves complex considerations of national security, ongoing investigations, and witness protection protocols that I didn't ask about the process. Jayapal cut him off, never raising her voice. I asked why you personally overrode the declassification. This memo says you flagged them. You suspended standard protocols. So I am asking directly, Director Patel, what are you hiding? The question hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot, because that is what it was. A direct accusation, not implied, not suggested, stated. What are you hiding? Patel's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. His lawyers weren't passing notes anymore. They were frozen. This wasn't something they had gamed out in prep sessions. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request a brief recess to gather the specific documents that would allow me to respond comprehensively to Representative Jayapal's questions. Request denied. That was Jim Jordan, the Republican chairman, Patel's supposed ally. The shock on Patel's face was visible even from the press gallery. Chairman Jordan continued, if Representative Jayapal has an FBI memo showing you personally blocked witness testimony releases, I think we'd all like to hear your explanation right now. Here is where Patel made his critical mistake. He tried to turn it into a partisan attack instead of answering the question. Congresswoman Jayapal, I find it concerning that there seems to be more interest in attacking the FBI's classification decisions than in supporting our ongoing work. Jayapal didn't let him finish. She pulled out another document. Director Patel, do you know what this is? It is a letter from the Department of Justice Inspector General dated December 15th, 2025. She began reading. The Inspector General has reviewed FBI Director Patel's classification override decisions regarding Epstein investigation files. We have identified multiple instances where witness testimony was flagged for permanent classification despite containing NO information that meets established criteria for national security exemption. She looked directly at Patel. The Inspector General reviewed your decisions, Director, and they found you violated your own classification standards. You blocked the release of testimony with no legitimate national security justification. The room was chaos now. Democrats were demanding answers. Republicans were trying to figure out how to spin this, and Patel just sat there, visibly sweating under the committee room lights. Let me be specific, Jayapal continued, her voice cutting through the noise. Witness testimony file 2847A, a woman who worked at Epstein's New York residence in 2009. She named 7 individuals she personally witnessed at the property. None of those individuals work in intelligence. None have government security clearances. None pose any national security risk. And yet you classified her testimony as permanently restricted. Why? Patel's voice came out strained. I don't have the specific file details in front of me. Jayapal pulled out another sheet. I do, she read slowly, making sure every word landed. The witness described seeing a prominent technology executive, a British royal family member, a Hollywood studio head, 2 hedge fund managers, and a former U.S. senator. She paused. She provided dates, descriptions, and offered to testify in court, and you buried her testimony. Director, you made sure the American people would never see what she said, not because of national security, but because the people she named are too powerful to expose. That is not accurate. Patel's voice was barely steady. Then correct me. Tell me which part is inaccurate. Tell me why this woman's testimony needed to be permanently classified. Tell me who you are protecting. Silence. 20 seconds of complete silence. In congressional hearings, 20 seconds is an eternity. It is a confession without words. Finally, Patel spoke. The classification decisions were made in consultation with multiple agencies, intelligence community partners, and legal advisors who determined that public release could compromise. Jayapal interrupted with devastating precision. Director, I have the classification review notes right here. She held up another document. Your Deputy Director of Counterintelligence wrote, and I quote, Director Patel has personally reviewed witness files 2847A through 2893C and has determined that despite no intelligence equities, public release would create unacceptable political complications. She let that sink in. Political complications, Director, not national security threats, not intelligence risks, political complications. That is why you hid 47 witness testimonies, because the truth would be politically complicated. But Jayapal wasn't finished. She pulled out one more sheet of paper, and this one changed everything. Director Patel, she said, her voice now carrying absolute moral authority. Do you recognize this name? She held up the paper. Maria Santos, 19 years old when she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. She testified to the FBI in 2010. She named 6 men who assaulted her. 6 men who she can identify, who she can describe in detail, who she is willing to testify against in court. Jayapal's voice cracked slightly. The first real emotion she'd shown, you classified her testimony as permanently restricted. Maria Santos is now 34 years old. She has waited 15 years for justice, and you decided that the men she named were more important than her right to be heard. And the room was absolutely still, because this wasn't about bureaucracy anymore. This wasn't about classification protocols or political complications. This was about a woman who was trafficked as a teenager and an FBI director who buried her testimony to protect her abusers. Director Patel, Jayapal said, I'm going to ask you one final question, and I want you to look at the cameras while you answer, because Maria Santos is watching. Thousands of survivors are watching, and the American people are watching. She paused. Why did you decide that protecting powerful men was more important than giving Maria Santos justice? Patel had nothing. No answer, no deflection, no bureaucratic escape hatch. He just sat there, his hands trembling slightly, his face pale under the lights. Congresswoman, he started, but his voice failed. I think that answer says everything we need to know, Jayapal said quietly. She closed her blue folder. The hearing devolved into procedural chaos after that, but none of that mattered. That 4-minute clip is now spreading across the world. Subpoenas are being drafted, and somewhere, Maria Santos and other survivors finally feel like their voices are being heard. The doors to that hearing room have closed, but the echoes have not. Kash Patel walked out, carrying a career that is collapsing, not because of partisan attacks, but because he could not explain why he chose to protect predators instead of their victims. In the end, accountability doesn't always require thousands of hours of investigation or stacks of files. Sometimes it just requires one person willing to ask the questions nobody else dares to ask. Pramila Jayapal asked, and Kash Patel's silence answered.